Huh. So, Hellboy is a reboot that happened, and I'm a little torn on it. So for those who don't know, I don't know how you don't, Hellboy is a fictional character who's based off of I think a graphic novel, if I remember straight, back in I think it's the 90s. And it had Del Toro, who actually went ahead and did the first two movies with Ron Perlman as the titular character, Hellboy. Those two movies were praised and are thought to be really, really great comic book movies. Actually, in my eye, really underappreciated by a lot of people for the most part. I mean, critics obviously panned them and said that they were great movies and, you know, and praise him, and obviously fans still talk about him today. The second one came out back in 2008, that was 11 years ago. And while I do remember, like, I don't even think it was last year, I think it was the year before, Ron Perlman and Del Toro actually really, they fought for a petition and tried to get the third installment finally being, like, greenlit. Because they had an idea, I don't know if they had a script ready, but they definitely had an idea. You know, they knew that they wanted to be 3 movies, and for some reason, Lionsgate decided that they wanted to reboot the thing. And, if you haven't seen it, the critics have obviously shit on it. And I don't think it deserves the ass blasting that it has gotten from the critics. But I also don't think it's nearly as praiseworthy as some of the people that I follow and I do appreciate have really let it out to be. Let's start from the beginning. Hellboy is something, you know, was somebody who was brought forth by Nazis and has been a part of the Bureau of something or whatever. I can't remember the exact name for it, but basically, you know, checks out the weird shit that happens. Takes out demons, takes out other witches and stuff like that. And honestly, it's that part of that world that's obviously really cool. It's something that's very reminiscent of, like, Underworld, per se. But instead of it being vampires versus werewolves, you have Hellboy who goes ahead and fights other demons and other supernatural beings. And for the most part, I'd say for like the first, like, half of the movie, I was kind of getting into it. However, it's the second half of the movie that really kind of let me down. I'm not going to show any clips because I already have DreamWorks copyright claiming my video, so I apologize if you're expecting something. I know Lionsgate is a bunch of assholes. No offense, but you guys flag a lot of people's content. So for the most part, I just really want to talk about really the 2/3 things that really bogged the movie down for me. But first, I do want to talk about the things that I did like. The fight scenes in the movie are great. Honestly, the fight scenes, I know you've seen it at least in one of the trailers. There's a fight scene between giants and Hellboy, and that whole scene is great. It's kind of artistic, it's fun, and it's basically kind of what I want out of a Hellboy movie. Now, I'm not tied to the first 2 movies like some people are. I remember watching the first movie, but it's been so long, and I know I need to revisit that before anybody writes that down. I know I need to revisit that, and I never got a chance to see 2 because it came out at a time where A, I didn't have any money, and B, I just kind of forgot about it. I wasn't really into movies back then. So, the fight scenes are great, and some of the dialogue, I mean, honestly, Harbour actually in this, as Hellboy, is actually really good. I know there's some people who'd be like, no, but Ron Perlman did better. And he might have, don't get me wrong, he might have. Because like I said, my memory's a little vague on Hellboy. But I thought Harbour did a really great job as Hellboy. Some of his quips, some of the one-liners he delivers, they're actually good. And I actually had fun with him as Hellboy. And to be honest with you, this might come as some sort of like crime against nature itself, but honestly, if Lionsgate decides to greenlight a sequel, I would like to see Harbour come back. And I mean, I hope Harbour does want to come back. But the biggest issue with this movie is the fact that there is I don't want to say it's a rumor, but it kind of is because nobody's really confirmed it. Really, you have anonymous sources talking about the movie to certain outlets right before the movie launched, who were saying that the producers and the director didn't see eye to eye, and they were constantly battling each other. And when watching through this movie with my own eyes, without any love and admiration for the first two movies, I absolutely can see that. Whether it's true or not, that's what I saw. And why is that? Because one of the three things that I want to touch on is the fact that the editing is just so choppy. There is just scene to scene to scene to scene, and then, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are certain scenes that are really are memorable, like the Giants, but it's just like, it's so almost clean cut. There's no getting to a certain scene, or there's just in-scene monologue, we're in a new scene. And it's upsetting because really, it didn't need to happen like that. And so, like I said, there's way too much choppiness to it. And that leads me into the second thing. You know, with that choppiness, instead of letting the movie flow, or instead of letting certain things just happen and we kind of see how things happen, we are given exposition up the ass. I mean, there are entire scenes just dedicated to somebody telling you the plot to the movie. And I was hoping we'd be done with this. I mean, even with the producers and the director not seeing eye to eye, the script still had this. That's still a problem. So it hurts the movie because, or at least it does for me, because when you have a movie like, let's say, Blade Runner 2049, whether people like it or not, I love the movie because there's a lot of visual storytelling. They don't just sit there and give you tons of exposition. There's maybe one or two like exposition scenes, but they're light. They basically kind of fill in small gaps. They don't just flood you with information like this movie does. Another great example of movies with way too much exposition are the prequel Star Wars movies, where they just talk and tell you rather than showing you or trying to tell a story visually. They just walk around and tell you the plot to everything, and it makes it where it really just kind of dumbs it down for an audience, and that's the problem. Like I said, there's some great stuff in this movie, don't get me wrong, but that obviously bogs it down. The choppiness of the scenes mixed with them telling you the story in just exposition instead of sound bites, absolute, just complete paragraphs, it doesn't work. And then, really, the last thing, which is, it's more of like a 2.5 rather than a full 3, but it is still a thing. And that is the terrible CGI. I mean, there are some scenes that have good CGI, great CGI. And then there's some scenes that are horrible. Certain, like, little things here and there that have CGI that just look bad. That's where Del Toro's, or at least from what I remember and what I've actually seen and heard other people say too, Del Toro did a lot of practical effects. He always has. So, because of that, you have, obviously, much more realistic things, and with less CGI, it just makes it where everything just flows better. But with everything being CGI, it takes some of the emotion away. Not all of it, obviously. I mean, I feel like this isn't the Star Wars prequels where people are just talking to blue screens, but it's obviously a bit of a problem when you can see the bad CGI. And so that's another thing that needs to be addressed if there is going to be a sequel. And actually, there is a fourth thing. There is a fourth thing. And that really just kind of comes back down to circling back around to the script. Obviously, exposition is a huge problem, but the reason why there's so much exposition in this movie is because it's so fucking convoluted. There's too many plot lines, and there's too many things trying to be clever, circling back to other things that's what bogs it down, and that also aids in the first thing too, where it's just choppiness. It's thing to thing to thing, because you have to sit there and resolve each plot line, and there's just so many of them. There's so many times that you have a monologue about a past event that then they teleport to the past event, show you what happened, then they come back and they explain to you in exposition, and that's really where it sucks a lot of the fun out of the movie. So, I know it sounds like I absolutely hate the movie having 4 things that I think need to be improved, but really, it's these things, and it's just minor things, too. Like, yes, I brought up 4 things, but really, if they toned them down just a smidge, then the movie not only would flow better, it would actually be great. It's really literally on the cusp of being great. Much like Crackdown 3, which I reviewed earlier. It's like that. It's like, it has all these great ideas, but instead of like really building on those, it kind of does, I don't want to say the lazy approach, but just it does the basic approach. Because of this, it leaves you wanting more out of the movie. So that it holds it back from greatness. But like I said, the fight scenes, the one-liners, a couple of the characters, I mean, some of them were kind of stiff and wooden, but some of the characters were fun, and they were interesting. But the problem, really, other than those 4 major things, is just the fact that really the movie delves into things that the first, and I guess even the second movie, really kind of just touched on. And really just kind of followed the same steps for the most part. Del Toro just did it better. And that's the problem. The main villain, played by Mila, I can't pronounce her name. You know her from the Resident Evil movies. Really sweet girl. And at this point, I'm almost certain she's a vampire. She's like in her 40s, and she looks like she's in her 20s. She's gorgeous. She's alright. I don't have any problems with her, no qualms with her. But I wish, it goes back to the whole idea of that everything's so convoluted, it doesn't give her main villain a chance to really shine. And really kind of be able to take the reins of anything. Also, another thing that kind of was odd to me was the music choices. Some of them fit, and you could kind of get into it with some of the action scenes, and some of it was just off. Almost like cartoon mixes when they're, running to a scene, or they're trying to get to a particular point, and instead of it being like an action-oriented music, it was like clown music. It didn't fit, and it was just weird. But this is the reason why I want, honestly, a director's cut. Because I'm curious if the rumors are true, and the blogs and the sites and everybody that said that the producers and the director didn't get along, and that the producers were editing it and doing certain things the director didn't want with his vision. I'm curious about what a director's cut would look like. I'd be okay with it being 3 hours long if it fills in some of the gaps. But I know, like I said before, some of the things that are written with the script itself, like the exposition, would never be fixed by this. But I feel like overall it would kind of help smooth the movie over, because there's a lot of bumps and ridges throughout it. There is some hope, like I said, really, if there is a sequel, it's just the fact that, really, Lionsgate needs to look at one of 2 things. If you're going to do a sequel to this movie, I'm okay with that. I know there's some people that won't be, but I'm okay with that. But you need to do one of 2 things. You either need to sit there and keep this director and help him out, get him maybe another writer or something like that, and switch your producers, or you need to blow up the whole thing and have a new writer, a new director, and new producers. But there needs to be some sort of massive change, because if it's true that the producers and the director were at each other's throats, and that's why the movie wound up being kind of a mess that it is, like I said, after watching this movie, it makes sense. That actually fits into, whether that's true or not, it looks like that's true. And that's not good. That's not good for your movie, that's not good for your reboot. Alright? Or you need to sit there and give Ron Perlman and Del Toro the green light, finally, to do the 3rd and final film. Or do both. I mean, I know that's confusing as hell, so don't do that. But, I mean, really, it's just, this isn't going to work. You can't, this movie, like I said, has a ton of potential, and you could say that about anything. You could say that about fucking Anthem or Fallout 76. But it's about capitalizing on that, and right here, it didn't capitalize enough. You've got Harbor, and you got, a few other characters that were really great. Also, because I forgot, and I should be shot, but Ian McShane was also in this movie as Hellboy's father, and he was pretty damn good, too. You have some great fight scenes. Mostly action is in frame, honestly. It's really competent. But the fact that there's too much CGI, there's too many plot lines, it's, you know, and so it's way too convoluted. There's too many just moving scenes. There's just too much choppiness. And there's just, you know, there's all these problems together just bog the movie down. I still had fun with the movie. I don't hate the movie. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate the movie. But these are things that are keeping it back from being great. Almost a masterpiece. So, I mean, because there are some great scenes. There are some really great scenes, cool scenes, things that stick in my head. I'm not going to forget it. And there's some great one-liners from Harbour as Hellboy. So, I would like to sit there and see a sequel, but there needs to be some changes. Absolutely. Before you greenlight that. So with that, I'm going to give my final verdict for Hellboy 2019 is a 6 out of 10. I was going to do a 5, but honestly, after, you know, really sitting down and watching the movie and on my drive back, I was like, no, there were a few things that I really did enjoy. Now, there is one other small thing that I do kind of agree with some people on, but it doesn't bother me as much. There is a lot of blood, and there is a lot of mutilation and all those other things. You're talking about a director who did do The Descent, okay? But there is just a lot of just violence for the sake of violence sometimes. And it's one of those things where, like, somebody did say it, I don't remember who it was, but one of the other reviewers that, you know, I listen to from time to time, they did say, you know, if they made it a little more stylistic, like, kind of like, there is a particular scene at the end of the movie that you'll see and you'll understand what I'm saying if you do go out and see this movie. But if they did a few more shots like that where it was more stylistic, I think it wouldn't have been as bad, because it felt like the violence and the gore was more for shock value than it was to sit there and either tell a story or prove a point or anything along the lines of that. It wasn't much for visual storytelling other than just check out this hellscape. And it's just, there's some of it that's used for visual storytelling, and there's some things that are supposed to try to unnerve you a little bit, and some of it does. But some of it is just, some of it's a little much. I know there's some people out there, friends of mine and fans of mine, that will still enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I have at it, you guys. But for some of us, it's just like, okay, it's just getting a little too extreme. So it's one of those things, I don't mind it. Just either dial it back a little bit or make it more stylistic. It's one of the two. I don't care which. Just one or the other. This isn't supposed to be a gore porn, okay? Anywho, so yes. So that's what I gave it, though, because like I said, there were some scenes and there were some, you know, moments. I had genuine fun with it. There were some great things. There was some cool stuff. And the ending obviously does set up for a second one. Whether we get it or not, who knows. But really, I hope that if we do get a second one, that they can have a little more fun with it. Because in some ways, it felt like this one took itself too seriously. And in some ways, it just wanted to have fun, and it didn't know which one it wanted to be. So, I think it's a little above average, but it does need some help. And those were my issues with the film. Do you guys agree? Let me know. Go ahead and write down in any of the comment sections. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, doesn't matter. Let me know. Tell me what you thought of the film. What did you grade the film? Did you go see it? And as always, too, please give me a thumbs up with the video if you like it or if it's helpful. Share it if you can. And I'll go ahead and I'll talk to you guys here real soon. I'll see you guys on the next On The Shelf. Alright, guys. Bye now.